My name is Enid Walker, 35 years old, sitting at our family brunch while my sister Stephanie waves the deed to our grandfather's mansion in my face. Enjoy your tiny apartment, she laughs, her diamond bracelet catching the light. My phone buzzes, Imperial Heights acquisition complete. All 98 luxury properties now under your control. I smile into my coffee, savoring the moment. Before I tell you what happened next, let me know where you're watching from. In the comments below, hit that like button and subscribe to join me for more stories about family secrets and sweet patient revenge. Growing up in the shadow of Stephanie was like living with a permanent eclipse. My sister, 3 years older and infinitely more favored, set the bar impossibly high in our family. From the moment she brought home her first perfect report card, my parents decided she was the golden child, the one destined for greatness. Our childhood home in Connecticut was spacious, but somehow never big enough for both of our achievements. When Stephanie won the regional spelling bee in 6th grade, my parents threw her a party with all the neighbors invited. When I placed first in the state science fair the following year, I got a pat on the head and a "that's nice, honey" before they returned to discussing Stephanie's college applications. Enid, why can't you be more like your sister? Became the soundtrack of my youth. Every dinner conversation circled back to Stephanie's accomplishments. Stephanie got accepted to Harvard Law. Stephanie made law review. Stephanie got hired by Patterson and Goldman right out of school. Meanwhile, my business degree from NYU might as well have been printed on toilet paper for all the acknowledgement it received. Business is so common, my mother Margaret would say, wrinkling her nose. Law is a respected profession with history. Stephanie is carrying on a family tradition. My father Thomas himself, a retired judge, would nod in agreement. The Walkers have been in law for 3 generations. It's in our blood. Apparently my blood was defective. The worst part wasn't the comparison. It was Stephanie's smug satisfaction. She'd place her manicured hand on my shoulder at family gatherings and say things like, "Don't worry, Enid. Not everyone can be an achiever. Someone has to be. Average." Then she'd laugh like she'd made the most charming joke. By the time I turned 25, I'd had enough. After a particularly brutal Thanksgiving, where Stephanie announced her first big court victory, and my father literally toasted the real success in the family, I made a decision. I would build something of my own, completely separate from the Walker name and legacy. I remember the day I asked my parents for a loan to start my own business. I'd prepared a whole presentation complete with market research and financial projections. I wasn't asking for charity, just the same support they'd given Stephanie when she needed money for her condo down payment after law school. A real estate investment company? My father laughed, not even bothering to look at my business plan. Enid, be realistic. Those take capital and connections. You have neither. Your sister needed that money for her home, my mother added. This is just a pipe dream. Stephanie, sitting at the table filing her nails, chimed in. Maybe try something more your speed, sis. Like retail management. You were always good at folding sweaters. That night I made myself a promise in my tiny studio apartment that I paid for myself. I would succeed, but I would do it quietly. And when the time came to reveal my success, the look on their faces would be worth every moment of struggle and dismissal. I started small, working my regular marketing job by day and educating myself on real estate investment at night. I saved every penny, lived on ramen and discount groceries, and avoided the expensive brunches and shopping trips my colleagues indulged in. Within 2 years, I had enough for a down payment on a small, run-down duplex in an up-and-coming neighborhood in Queens. During those early years, I maintained the facade my family expected. When they asked about my life, I kept it vague. Work is fine. The apartment is fine. I let them believe I was just trudging along, barely making ends meet. Stephanie would send me her cast-off designer clothes with notes like, "Thought you could use something nice for job interviews." I donated them all. Meanwhile, I renovated that duplex myself on weekends, learning plumbing and basic electrical work from YouTube videos. I rented out both units and used the income to save for my next property. All while Stephanie continued to rise in her law firm, making partner at 32 and buying herself a Porsche to celebrate. At family gatherings, I became a ghost. I'd show up, listen to the Stephanie show, and leave without making waves. They barely noticed I was there, which suited my purposes perfectly. The less they knew about my life, the bigger the surprise would be when I finally revealed the truth. By my 30th birthday, I owned 4 properties and had created Walker Investments, LLC, my first company, named with intentional irony. My parents never asked what I did with my time, so they never knew about the weekends I spent fixing up properties or the evenings I spent networking with other investors and learning the market. For 7 years, I built my empire, brick by brick, property by property, all while my family continued to see me as the underachieving daughter who couldn't measure up to brilliant Stephanie, the perfect cover for what I was really doing. The brunch that changed everything was held at Le Bernardin, my grandfather Harold Walker's favorite restaurant in Manhattan. He had passed away 3 months earlier, at the age of 92, and the family was gathering for the official reading of the will. Grandfather Harold had been a federal judge, respected and feared in equal measure, and his estate was substantial. I arrived 15 minutes early, dressed in a simple black dress from Target. Nothing that would raise eyebrows or suggest I was anything but the struggling younger daughter. Stephanie was already there, holding court in a Chanel suit, her husband Bradley nodding along to whatever she was saying. My parents sat across from them looking somber but expectant. "Enid, you made it," my mother said, sounding surprised, even though I'd confirmed twice. "We were just discussing the summer house in the Hamptons. Your sister thinks it might need renovations before it can be sold." "If I inherit it," Stephanie corrected, "I might keep it. Bradley and I could use a weekend retreat." The family lawyer, Richard Goldstein, arrived precisely at 11. He'd been my grandfather's friend for 50 years and handled all the Walker legal matters. He nodded at me with a small smile. I'd always liked Richard. He was the only one who ever seemed to see me as more than Stephanie's lesser shadow. "Shall we begin?" he asked, opening his leather briefcase and removing a thick document. Harold was very specific about how this should proceed. Everyone leaned forward as Richard adjusted his glasses and began reading. The will started with the usual formalities, then moved to specific bequests. Cousin James got the vintage car collection. Aunt Patricia received the art. My mother and her sister Martha split the stock portfolio. Then came the big reveal. To my granddaughter Stephanie Walker Roberts, I leave my primary residence at 15 Willow Lane, Greenwich, Connecticut, including all furnishings and the surrounding 5 acres. Stephanie squealed and grabbed Bradley's arm. "The mansion! I got the mansion!" Her eyes gleamed with triumph as she looked around the table, particularly at me. The Greenwich mansion was the crown jewel of my grandfather's holdings, a 12,000 square foot Georgian colonial built in 1925, worth at least $7 million in today's market. It had been the site of family gatherings for decades and had a certain prestige in Connecticut's social circles. Richard continued reading. To my granddaughter, Enid Walker, I leave my collection of law books and my fountain pen set with which I hope she might find inspiration to finally pursue a respectable profession. My father coughed awkwardly. My mother looked at her plate. Stephanie didn't bother hiding her smirk. "That's it?" she asked, not even trying to mask her glee. "Books and pens?" I nodded, keeping my expression neutral. Grandfather always did have a sense of humor. More like a sense of who deserves what, Stephanie replied, pulling out her phone to take a selfie with the deed Richard had just handed her. "I already know exactly how I'm going to redecorate. That master suite is going to be amazing." "Congratulations," I said quietly. "Oh, don't look so sad," Enid, Stephanie crooned, reaching across to pat my hand condescendingly. "You can come visit any time. Maybe you can help clean, since you're so good at fixing up that tiny apartment of yours." My phone buzzed in my purse. I ignored it. "I mean, where do you even live now? That studio in Queens? Or did you downgrade to a closet in Brooklyn?" Stephanie laughed at her own joke, and Bradley dutifully chuckled beside her. My phone buzzed again, insistently. I excused myself and stepped away from the table to check it. The first message was an email notification. "Imperial Heights acquisition complete. All 98 luxury properties now under your control. Final documents awaiting your signature." The second was a text from my real estate broker, Jason. "Enid, amazing news. Herald Square deal closed early. All 98 units now officially part of Imperial Heights Holdings. You just added $27 million to your portfolio. Champagne tonight." I took a deep breath and returned to the table where Stephanie was showing our parents photos of the mansion's interior on her phone. "This room will be perfect for entertaining clients," she was saying. "I can host fundraisers for the firm. Maybe even a judicial campaign launch party for Bradley in a few years." "Everything okay?" my cousin Amanda asked quietly as I sat down. She was the only family member who had ever shown genuine interest in my life. "Perfect," I replied, unable to keep a small smile from forming. "Just perfect." Amanda looked at me curiously. "You seem different. Happy." "I am," I said, taking a sip of my coffee, as Stephanie continued to describe her plans for our grandfather's mansion. "Very happy indeed." 7 years earlier, I sat in my cubicle at Reynolds Marketing, staring at my computer screen, but seeing nothing. It was my 31st birthday, and no one at work remembered. No cake, no cards, not even a perfunctory happy birthday in the break room. At home, a single text from my mother waited. "Stephanie just won the Patterson case. 7-figure settlement. Call your sister to congratulate her." I didn't call. Instead, I pulled out the dog-eared real estate investment book I'd been hiding in my desk drawer. Financial Freedom Through Property by Sarah Winston had become my Bible over the past 6 months. I'd highlighted nearly every page, made notes in the margins, and created spreadsheets based on her formulas for calculating potential returns. That night I made a decision. I withdrew my entire savings, $23,000, and enrolled in Sarah Winston's weekend boot camp for aspiring real estate investors. It cost $5,000. I could barely afford, but it changed everything. Sarah was nothing like I expected. In her 50s, with silver-streaked dark hair and practical clothes, she looked more like a favorite aunt than a millionaire property mogul. "Most people will tell you that you need to start big to make it in real estate," she told our small group. "That's garbage. What you need is strategy." Her strategy was brilliant in its simplicity: buy properties with problems that scared away other investors but could be fixed relatively cheaply. Look for outdated kitchens, not foundation issues. Seek out estate sales where heirs wanted quick cash. Find divorce situations where assets needed to be liquidated fast. And most importantly, she said, fixing me with a knowing look during our one-on-one consultation, create an anonymous business entity. If people know you're buying, they'll inflate the prices. Be invisible. until you're ready to be seen." I took her advice to heart. The following Monday, I formed Imperial Heights Holdings LLC, named after the street I grew up on, a private joke only I would understand. I created a generic email address and business cards with only a phone number. I hired a virtual assistant to answer calls as Imperial Heights office and forward messages to me. My first property was a disaster, a two-bedroom condo in Astoria with water damage and a kitchen straight out of 1976. The sellers were a couple in their 80s moving to Florida who needed to close quickly. I got it for $170,000 when similar units in the building were selling for $250,000. I spent every weekend for 3 months renovating that condo myself. I learned to install cabinets from a Ukrainian handyman who took pity on me at Home Depot. I watched countless YouTube tutorials on tiling and drywall repair. I slept on an air mattress in the living room to save commuting time. When I finally listed it for rent, I had 3 applications within 24 hours. The monthly income covered my mortgage plus $500 profit. I was hooked. My second property came 4 months later, another distressed sale. This time, a small house in New Jersey with an overgrown yard and peeling paint that the neighbors had been complaining about. The owner had died, and his children in California wanted it gone. I negotiated the price down by pointing out every flaw, then spent 6 weekends bringing it back to life. There were failures, too. A duplex in the Bronx that turned out to have serious electrical problems I couldn't afford to fix. A condo where the association suddenly levied a massive special assessment right after I closed. I learned from each mistake, refined my strategy, and kept moving forward. By year 3, I had 7 properties generating positive cash flow and had quit my marketing job to focus on real estate full-time. I told my family I was between positions and let them assume I was struggling. Stephanie sent me a self-help book called Finding Your Career Path After 30. I used it to level a wobbly table in one of my renovation projects. That same year, I met Jason Richards at a real estate networking event. He was a commercial broker who specialized in multi-unit buildings and had connections I needed. When I told him about Imperial Heights, he was skeptical at first. "You've got a good small portfolio," he said, "but the big leagues are different. We're talking millions in capital, not thousands." "I'm ready to scale up," I told him firmly. "I've been studying commercial multifamily buildings for the past year. I have $300,000 in liquid capital and access to private lending partners." He raised an eyebrow. "Who are you really? You don't act like any small-time investor I've ever met." That night, I showed him my true portfolio and business plan. By the end of our meeting, he was my broker, and within 6 months, we'd acquired our first apartment building, 16 units in Queens, with below-market rents and outdated systems. Year 4 brought rapid expansion. I leveraged my existing properties to finance larger acquisitions. I formed relationships with contractors who gave me fair prices because I provided steady work. I hired a property management company to handle the day-to-day operations so I could focus on growth. By year 5, Imperial Heights Holdings had expanded to include 3 separate LLCs, each owning different property types. I had 42 residential units, a small office building, and a retail strip center. My net worth on paper had crossed the $2 million mark, though I still lived in a modest apartment and drove a 5-year-old Honda. I created a complicated ownership structure on purpose, with holding companies owning other companies, making it nearly impossible for anyone to trace everything back to me. Not because I was doing anything illegal, I wasn't, but because I wanted the big reveal to be on my terms when I was ready. Year 6 brought the opportunity I'd been waiting for. A developer had overextended himself on a luxury condo conversion in Herald Square and needed to offload the entire project before his lenders foreclosed. 98 units in various stages of completion in a prime Manhattan location. The asking price was $45 million. With Jason's help, I put together a consortium of investors with Imperial Heights as the managing partner. We negotiated the price down to $38 million and closed the deal. For a year, I poured everything into completing that project. I hired the best contractors, sourced materials directly from manufacturers to save costs, and personally approved every design decision. I worked 18-hour days and slept on a cot in the building's future yoga studio. And through it all, my family remained clueless. When Stephanie bragged about her promotion to senior partner, I nodded and said, "That's great." When my mother complained that I never came home for Sunday dinners anymore because I was always working on some project, she had no idea how literal that statement was. The Herald Square property was my masterpiece, my statement to the world. Or at least it would be once I was ready to reveal who was behind Imperial Heights. But I wasn't quite ready yet. I needed the perfect moment, and as it turned out, fate was about to hand it to me on a silver platter. The days following the brunch were a social media extravaganza starring Stephanie and her new mansion. Every hour seemed to bring another post, Stephanie posing on the grand staircase, Stephanie measuring the dining room for a new table, Stephanie pointing excitedly at the wine cellar. Each post garnered dozens of congratulatory comments from her law firm colleagues and country club friends. Another walker, making her mark in Greenwich society, one comment read, "You were born for this house," gushed another. I scrolled through them while sitting in my real office, not the modest home office my family thought I had, but the entire 20th floor of a building in Midtown that served as Imperial Heights headquarters. Around me, 12 employees managed operations, acquisitions, and finances for my now substantial real estate empire. Miss Walker, my assistant Rachel, knocked on my open door. The contractors need approval on the Herald Square penthouse finishes, and Jason called again about the celebration dinner. I closed Instagram and switched back to business mode. Tell them I approve the Italian marble option, and tell Jason I'll meet him Friday at 7. 3 days after the brunch, my phone rang, with Stephanie's ringtone, "Material Girl" by Madonna, which seemed fitting. "Enid, I'm having a small gathering at the mansion this weekend. Just 50 or so close friends to see the place. You should come." Her voice had that familiar, condescending tone, the one that said, "I'm including you out of obligation, and we both know it." "Thanks for the invitation," I replied, keeping my voice neutral. "What time?" 6 to 9 on Saturday. Wear something nice." She paused. "If you need to borrow something, I can set aside a few options for you." I bit back a retort. "I'll manage." "Great. Oh, and I wanted to ask, do you know anything about maintaining these old houses? There's a weird water stain in one of the bathrooms, and the kitchen makes this strange humming sound." I did know, actually. I'd renovated 3 pre-war buildings in the past 2 years and had become something of an expert on old home infrastructure, but I decided to play dumb. "No idea. Maybe call a plumber." "Ugh, they're so expensive." "I thought, since you're always doing little DIY projects in your apartment, you might have some budget fix." I almost laughed. My little DIY projects had evolved into managing multi-million-dollar renovations, but she still saw me as someone who couldn't afford professional repairs. "Sorry, can't help," I said. "See you Saturday." That evening, my parents called. I braced myself for the usual Stephanie-centered conversation and wasn't disappointed. Your sister is doing such amazing things with the mansion, my mother gushed without even saying hello. She's keeping all the historical elements but modernizing in just the right ways. That's nice, I said, reviewing contracts for a new property acquisition while half listening. She mentioned you're coming to the housewarming, my father chimed in. Good. Family should stick together. I wouldn't miss it, I replied. You know, he continued, Stephanie might need some help managing the property. It's a lot of responsibility for someone with her busy career. Maybe you could assist her since you don't have as much on your plate. I nearly choked. If only he knew that I managed properties worth over $70 million and had a staff of property managers reporting to me daily. I think Stephanie can handle it, I said carefully. She's always been the capable one, right? Of course, but everyone needs help sometimes, my mother said, and it would give you something meaningful to do. There it was, the assumption that my life lacked meaning because it didn't follow their prescribed path. 7 years of building a business from nothing, and they still saw me as underemployed and directionless. I'll keep that in mind, I said, ending the call as quickly as possible. Saturday arrived, and I decided to make a statement. I wore a simple black Armani dress, understated, but unmistakably expensive, with a pair of Louboutin heels I'd bought to celebrate my first million in profits. I had my hair and makeup done professionally and wore the diamond studs that had been my personal reward for the Herald Square acquisition. When I arrived at the mansion, Stephanie did a double take. Wow, you look different. Did you get a makeover or something? Just dressed for the occasion, I replied, handing my coat to the hired attendant. The mansion was impressive, no doubt. Soaring ceilings, intricate moldings, hardwood floors that had been polished to a mirror shine. But my trained eye caught problems immediately. Hairline cracks in the plaster ceiling, water damage concealed behind strategically placed furniture windows that didn't quite close properly. This house needed serious work, and Stephanie had no idea. As I circulated through the rooms, sipping champagne and making small talk with Stephanie's friends, I overheard her telling a group about her plans. We're thinking of renovating the kitchen next month. Nothing major, just updating appliances and maybe taking down a wall or two. I bit my lip. Taking down walls in a 1925 house without proper structural assessment recipe for disaster. Later, as guests gathered in the grand living room, Stephanie clinked her glass for attention. I want to thank everyone for coming to celebrate this new chapter in our lives. The Walker family has a proud tradition of success, and this house is a testament to that. She gestured grandly around the room. Some people are just meant for greatness, she continued, her eyes finding me in the crowd. And some are meant to, well, find their own path. Right, Enid? A few guests chuckled uncomfortably. My little sister here lives in a cute apartment in, where is it now, Queens? Manhattan, actually, I corrected quietly. Manhattan upgraded, have we? Well, good for you. Her tone made it clear what she thought of my supposed upgrade. Maybe someday you can have a place half this size if you finally find a career that sticks, she added with a laugh that others hesitantly joined. I smiled tightly and raised my glass. To finding your path, I said, meeting her eyes, whatever that may be. Stephanie looked momentarily confused by my lack of embarrassment, but quickly moved on to showing off the antique chandelier in the dining room. As I was preparing to leave, my cousin Amanda caught up with me in the hallway. That was uncomfortable, she said. Stephanie seems even more insufferable than usual tonight. I shrugged. She's always been that way. Amanda studied me closely. You seem different lately, more confident, like you know something the rest of us don't. I smiled enigmatically. Maybe I do. Care to share? Not yet, I replied, gathering my coat, but soon, very soon. 1 month after the reading of the will, the family group chat exploded with messages. Stephanie was in crisis mode. Emergency family meeting. My house, tonight. 7 p.m. Mandatory. I arrived exactly on time to find my parents already there, sitting stiffly in the grand living room that now had visible water stains on the ceiling. Stephanie paced back and forth, her face tight with stress. "What's going on?" I asked, taking a seat on the antique sofa. "What's going on?" Stephanie repeated, her voice rising. "What's going on is that this house is falling apart. The inspector just left. Do you know what he said? Do you?" Without waiting for an answer, she continued, $750,000. That's what it's going to cost to fix the foundation issues. Another $300,000 for the roof. The plumbing is original to 1925 and needs to be completely redone. The electrical wiring is a fire hazard. She collapsed dramatically into an armchair. $1.8 million minimum. That's what this gift is going to cost me. My father cleared his throat. "Stephanie, calm down. We can figure this out." How Bradley and I are stretched thin with the new beach house in the Hamptons. We can't liquidate our investments right now, the market's down. The firm won't give me a loan this large without collateral. My mother looked at me. "Enid, do you have any savings that could help your sister?" I nearly laughed out loud. They were asking if I, the perpetual underachiever in their eyes, could help finance a multi-million-dollar renovation. "I don't think my savings would make a dent in $1.8 million, I said carefully. Stephanie shot me an annoyed look. "Of course not. I don't know why Mom even asked." She resumed pacing. "I've decided to sell. I talked to a real estate agent yesterday. She thinks we can get $6.5 million as is, which is less than it's worth, but would let me walk away clean." Sell grandfather's house. My father looked shocked, but it's been in the family for generations. "What choice do I have?" Stephanie snapped. "Unless you're offering to pay for the renovations." My father fell silent. "The agent already has a potential buyer," Stephanie continued. "Some big development company that's buying up properties in Greenwich. Imperial something." My heart skipped a beat. "Imperial Heights?" I asked, keeping my voice casual. "Yes, that's it, Imperial Heights Holdings." Stephanie looked at me in surprise. "How did you know?" "I've heard of them," I said with a shrug. "They're active in the New York market too." "Well, they've expressed serious interest. My agent is bringing their representative over tomorrow to see the property." She sighed dramatically. "I never thought I'd have to sell grandfather's legacy." "Who is this Imperial Heights company anyway?" my father asked. "I've never heard of them." "They're quite successful," I offered. "They own properties all over the East Coast." "How do you know so much about them?" Stephanie asked suspiciously. Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. "That must be Jason Stephanie," said, heading for the door. "The broker from Imperial Heights. He's early, but I told him to come by if he had questions before tomorrow's official showing." My pulse quickened. Jason. My Jason. This was not how I had planned for my family to find out. But perhaps the universe had its own timeline. Stephanie returned with Jason in tow, and I saw his eyes widen in shock when he spotted me sitting in the living room. "Enid," he said, clearly confused. "What are you doing here?" "You two know each other?" Stephanie asked, looking between us. Jason looked at me uncertainly. Yes, we've worked together on several projects." "Really?" My mother sounded surprised. "What kind of projects?" Jason glanced at me again, clearly unsure how to proceed. I gave him a small nod. It was time. "Miss Walker and I have been business associates for about 4 years now," he said professionally. "She's one of our most valued clients." Clients, my father repeated. What does that mean? Jason looked increasingly uncomfortable. I think maybe Miss Walker should explain. All eyes turned to me. Imperial Heights Holdings is my company, I said simply. I founded it 7 years ago. The silence that followed was deafening. That's not possible, Stephanie finally said. Imperial Heights owns dozens of properties. They're worth millions. 98 properties, actually, I corrected her. And the current portfolio valuation is just over $72 million. My mother's hand flew to her mouth. $72 million. That's not including the Herald Square development that just closed, Jason added helpfully. That's another $27 million in equity once the final units are sold. My father stared at me like he'd never seen me before. You're saying you own all of that, you? Yes, I replied calmly. I do. Stephanie's face had gone from shocked to angry. This is ridiculous. You can barely manage your own apartment. You've never succeeded at anything. How could you possibly run a multi-million-dollar real estate company? I've been running it successfully for 7 years, I said. While all of you assumed I was floundering, I was building an empire. Property by property, deal by deal. Why didn't you tell us? My mother asked, looking hurt. Would you have believed me? I countered. When have any of you ever believed I could succeed at anything? No one had an answer for that. This is some kind of trick, Stephanie insisted, her voice rising. You're lying. Or it's not really your company, you're just working there or something. Jason cleared his throat. I can assure you, Miss Roberts, your sister is the sole owner and CEO of Imperial Heights Holdings. I've personally witnessed her build this company from its first property to its current portfolio. She's one of the most respected developers in the New York market. Stephanie's face flushed with anger. So what, you've been pretending to be unsuccessful all these years, living in a small apartment, driving an old car, letting us think you were struggling. Why would anyone do that? Because you never would have let me succeed on my own terms, I said quietly. You would have taken over, made it about you somehow, or dismissed it as lucky or insignificant. I needed to build something that was undeniably mine, something so successful that even you couldn't diminish it. My father stood up, his face pale. So all this time, while we were worried about you. You weren't worried about me, I interrupted. You were disappointed in me. There's a difference. The room fell silent again. So I said, finally turning to Stephanie. About the mansion, Jason is right. Imperial Heights is interested in acquiring it. But now that you know the company is mine, the question is, do you still want to sell it to me? Stephanie's laugh was shrill and brittle. Sell grandfather's mansion to you after you've been deceiving us for years? Absolutely not. It's not deception to keep my business private, I replied calmly. And it's a straightforward business proposition. You need to sell because you can't afford the renovations. I'm offering to buy at market value. Market value, Stephanie scoffed. This house is worth $8 million at least. Not with foundation problems, outdated electrical and plumbing issues, I countered. Jason, what's your professional assessment? Jason cleared his throat. Based on the inspection report, Miss Roberts shared with our office and comparable properties in the area $6.5 million is actually quite fair for an as-is sale. My father stood up, his lawyer instincts finally kicking in. Hold on, Enid, you're telling us that for 7 years you've been building this real estate empire, in secret, while letting us believe you were struggling. Yes, I said simply. But why? My mother asked, her voice wavering. Why would you hide your success from your family? Think about it, I said, looking at each of them in turn. When have any of you ever supported my ambitions? When have you ever believed I could succeed at anything? The day I asked for a loan to start my business, you laughed at me. Dad called it a pipe dream. Mom suggested I wasn't cut out for business. And Stephanie, I turned to my sister. You told me to stick to folding sweaters, because that was more my speed. No one spoke. The memories hung in the air between us. So yes, I built my company in secret. I worked 18-hour days, taught myself construction and finance, networked with investors, and created something successful. And I did it without any support or encouragement from my family. You should have told us, my father insisted. Why? So you could diminish my achievements, compare them unfavorably to Stephanie's law career. No thank you. Stephanie, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, suddenly erupted. This is all about jealousy, isn't it? You've always been jealous of me, of my success, of the fact that Mom and Dad are proud of me. So you cooked up this whole real estate scheme to try to one-up me. I laughed, genuinely amused. Stephanie, not everything is about you. I built Imperial Heights for myself, not to compete with you. I couldn't care less about impressing you or anyone else in this room. Then why reveal it now? She demanded. Why not keep your precious secret? Because you need to sell this house, and I want to buy it. It's business, not personal. It feels pretty personal, my father muttered. Fine, Stephanie said, crossing her arms. If you're such a real estate mogul, prove it. Show us tax returns, bank statements, property deeds, anything that proves you actually own this company, and it's worth what you claim. Jason looked uncomfortable. Miss Roberts, I can assure you. I held up a hand to stop him. It's okay, Jason. I turned to Stephanie. You want proof. Fine. I pulled out my phone, opened my banking app, and handed it to her. Her eyes widened as she scrolled through the accounts. This could be anyone's account, she said, but her voice lacked conviction. The name on the account is Enid Walker, I pointed out, and that's just my personal accounts. The business accounts are separate. I took back my phone and pulled up the Imperial Heights website, then handed it back. Check the About page. Stephanie scrolled down to find my professional headshot and bio, Enid Walker, founder and CEO. This could be faked, she insisted weakly. Stephanie, my mother said quietly. Stop. Something in my mother's tone made Stephanie look up. For perhaps the first time in our adult lives, our mother wasn't automatically taking Stephanie's side. I think my mother said carefully, we need to accept that your sister has built something impressive, something we never gave her credit for being capable of building. My father nodded slowly. $72 million, he murmured, as if still trying to wrap his head around it. My God, Enid. 72 million and counting, I corrected him. The Herald Square development will add significantly to that figure once it's fully sold. Stephanie stood up abruptly. This is ridiculous. I refuse to sit here and watch everyone fawn over Enid's supposed success story. For all we know, she's leveraged to the hilt and one bad month away from bankruptcy. Imperial Heights has a debt-to-equity ratio of 35%, I said calmly. Well below industry average. We're extremely stable. Whatever, Stephanie snapped. The point is, I'm not selling grandfather's house to you. I don't care how much money you claim to have. That's your choice, I replied with a shrug. But your options are limited. You can't afford the renovations. You can't get a loan large enough to cover them. And the longer you wait, the more the property will deteriorate, further decreasing its value. I'll find another buyer. In this market, with these issues, good luck. Most buyers will walk away when they see the inspection report, or they'll offer even less than I'm willing to pay. Stephanie looked to our parents for support, but they remained surprisingly silent. "I can't believe this," she said bitterly. "My whole life, I've done everything right. I followed the path, became a lawyer like Dad wanted, made partner, married well, and now suddenly, Enid is the successful one, the wealthy one, after years of being. A disappointment," I finished for her. "Is that what you were going to say?" Stephanie didn't answer, but her expression confirmed it. "Here's my offer," I said, standing up. $6.5 million for the mansion as island. I'll cover all closing costs. You can keep any furnishings or personal items you want. The offer expires in 48 hours. "What would you even do with it?" Stephanie asked. "Tear it down. Turn it into condos." "That's my business," I replied. "But if you must know, I was thinking of restoring it, properly, with respect for its history and architecture." 48 hours isn't enough time to decide, my father interjected. "It's a standard time frame for a cash offer," I said. "And let's be honest, Stephanie doesn't have many other options." Stephanie glared at me. "This feels like extortion." "It's called negotiation," I corrected her. "Something I've become very good at over the years." After a tense silence, Stephanie finally spoke. "Fine, I'll sell. But not because you've backed me into a corner. Because I never wanted this old house anyway. It's just a burden." We all knew it was a face-saving lie, but I let her have it. "I'll have the paperwork drawn up tomorrow. Jason will handle the details." As I gathered my things to leave, my mother stopped me at the door. "Enid," she said quietly, "I don't understand why you felt you couldn't share your success with us. We're your family." I looked at her sadly. "Are we?" "Because families are supposed to believe in each other, support each other. Not just the golden child, but all their children." "We've always supported you," she insisted. "No, Mom. You've always tolerated me. There's a difference," I sighed. "Maybe now that the truth is out, we can start building a real relationship. But it's going to take time." As I walked to my car, I felt a strange mixture of emotions: satisfaction that my success was finally acknowledged, sadness for the years of distance, and hope that maybe, just maybe, things could be different going forward. But mostly I felt free. The secret that had both driven me and constrained me was finally out in the open. Whatever happened next, I would face it as my true self, Enid Walker, self-made millionaire and CEO of Imperial Heights Holdings. 6 months passed like a whirlwind. The purchase of my grandfather's mansion closed without further drama, though Stephanie barely spoke to me throughout the process. My parents oscillated between apologetic overtures and lingering disbelief about my success. I gave them space to process the revelation while I focused on what mattered most, continuing to build my business and deciding what to do with the mansion. The first time I walked through the property as its owner was surreal. This house that had always symbolized family achievement, that had been deemed too good for me, was now mine. Not through inheritance or marriage, but through my own hard work and determination. I assembled my best team to tackle the renovation. We addressed the foundation issues first, then the roof and electrical systems. I spared no expense, using period-appropriate materials whenever possible. This wasn't just another investment property, it was a statement, a reclamation of my place in the family narrative. 3 months into the renovation, I made a decision about the mansion's future. It wouldn't be my home. I preferred my sleek Manhattan penthouse, but it wouldn't be flipped for profit either. Instead, I established the Walker Women in Real Estate Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to teaching women, especially those from disadvantaged backgrounds, how to build wealth through property investment. The mansion became our headquarters and training center, with classrooms in the former bedrooms, a technology lab in the library, and a community space in the grand living room. The kitchen, where family dinners had once excluded me, was now where students shared meals and built networks. The garden where Stephanie had played while I watched from inside became a meditation space for women learning to visualize their success. One Tuesday morning in May, I was reviewing curriculum plans with our education director when Rachel, my assistant, interrupted. "Your mother is here," she said quietly. "She doesn't have an appointment, but she seems upset." I found my mother in the foyer, looking small and uncertain beneath the grand staircase. "Mom, is everything okay?" She nodded, then shook her head. I was driving by and saw the sign. She gestured to the new bronze plaque by the entrance announcing the Walker Women in Real Estate Foundation. "I didn't know. I didn't realize what you were doing with the place." "Would you like a tour?" I offered. As we walked through the transformed spaces, my mother was uncharacteristically quiet. In the former dining room now, a financial planning center, she finally spoke. "Your father and I have been doing a lot of thinking, Enid. About you, about how we treated you growing up." She ran her hand along a restored mahogany table. "We were wrong. So wrong." I waited, letting her find her words. "We put all our pride in Stephanie because she followed the path we understood. Law made sense to us. Business." She shook her head. "We didn't get it. And instead of trying to understand your dreams, we dismissed them." "Yes," I said simply, "you did." "I'm not asking for forgiveness," she continued. "I'm just telling you that we see it now. We see you and what you've built here." She gestured around the room. "It's extraordinary." It wasn't a perfect apology, but it was a start. For the first time, my mother was seeing me as I truly was, not as a lesser version of Stephanie. "Dad wanted to come too," she added, "but he's still processing. You know how he is with admitting he's wrong." I smiled slightly. "I do." "He's proud of you, though. We both are. Very proud." The words I'd waited decades to hear felt both satisfying and strangely hollow. I'd long since stopped needing their approval, but hearing it still healed something deep inside me. "Thank you," I said. "That means something." 2 weeks later, I hosted an official opening ceremony for the foundation. To my surprise, my entire family attended. My father shook my hand stiffly, but sincerely. Cousins, who had always gravitated towards Stephanie, now approached me with newfound respect. Even Amanda winked and whispered, "I always knew you were up to something good." Stephanie arrived last wearing sunglasses, even though the day was cloudy. She'd lost some of her gleam in the months since the revelation. The law firm had downsized, affecting her partnership track, and Bradley's judicial ambitions had hit a funding snag. After the ceremony, she found me alone in the garden. "Nice speech," she said, removing her sunglasses. "Very inspirational." "Thank you," I replied, waiting for the barb that usually followed her compliments. Instead, she sighed and sat on a stone bench. "I've been thinking a lot about why I always felt the need to diminish you." This was unexpected. In 35 years, I'd never heard Stephanie admit to any wrongdoing. And I prompted. "And I think I was afraid." She looked at her perfectly manicured hands. "Afraid that if you succeeded, it would somehow make my achievements less special. Like there was only room for one successful Walker daughter." "There's room for both of us," I said. "There always was." "I know that now." She met my eyes. "What you've done building this company from nothing. It's impressive, Enid. Really impressive." "Thank you." "I'm not asking for us to be best friends," she continued. "Too much has happened. But maybe we could start over, as adults who respect each other's paths." I considered her offer. The hurt of decades couldn't be erased in one conversation, but holding on to resentment served no purpose either. "I'd like that," I said finally. "A fresh start." As Stephanie left, I remained in the garden, reflecting on the journey that had brought me here. 7 years of silent determination, of proving myself not to my family, but to myself. 7 years of turning dismissal into fuel for my ambition. The biggest lesson I'd learned wasn't about real estate or business strategy. It was about the power of self-belief in the face of doubt. About the freedom that comes from defining success on your own terms, not someone else's. I had once thought the ultimate victory would be seeing the shock on my family's faces when they discovered my success. But the real triumph was in the building itself. The daily choices, the perseverance, the quiet confidence that grew with each achievement. The mansion that had once symbolized my exclusion from family prestige now stood for something far more meaningful. A legacy of empowerment for women who, like me, had been told their dreams were too big or their ambitions inappropriate. As I looked around at what I'd created, I felt a profound sense of peace. The need for validation that had driven me for so long had transformed into something stronger, the knowledge that I had validated myself, and that was enough. The sun was setting as I walked back into the mansion, now humming with the energy of women, learning, growing, and building their own paths to success. This was my true inheritance, not a building or a bank account, but the power to create meaning from rejection and triumph from dismissal. In the end, success wasn't about proving others wrong. It was about proving myself right. Have you ever had to rebuild yourself after being underestimated? Share your story in the comments below. And if this tale of silent determination resonated with you, please hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and share this video with someone who needs a reminder that success is the best revenge. Thank you for listening to my journey, and remember, your path is valid even when others can't see it yet.